Thank you, John, and thank all of you for braving the weather and coming out. And thanks especially to the co-sponsors who joined IPS in this, and the AFL-CIO for making this room available. And it's wonderful to see so many people here and so many old friends here. So thank you all very much. I will try to not talk for too long. I have my watch. I didn't have it one time when I was speaking at Yale, and I'm delighted to see some of my students from Yale here. And I ran over real badly, and I apologize for not having my watch and letting things get out of hand. And the student stood up and said, "That's okay, Dean Speth. There's a calendar on the wall behind you." It's good to be here also on the first anniversary of Occupy Wall Street, momentous event. I want to tell you about the book, and I hope it'll interest you enough to read it. Let me begin with a personal note. I decided to get into this subject thinking about my grandchildren. We have 5 already and 6 coming soon. And I began to ask myself, what's the America that we'd like to see for these children when they grow up? What is the America that we're headed towards if we don't correct ourselves? I believe it's still possible to build an attractive future in, say, 2050 for today's children. But it won't be easy, and we haven't got much time to do it. So what does that future look like? How do we get there? And what do we do now? These are the questions that I address in the book. And I want to talk about 4 points that correspond to the 4 parts of the book. The first is the imperative of system change. If we look at the conditions and trends in our country today, we have to admit it's damn distressing. In the book, I review a huge load of problems afflicting our country, economically, environmentally, socially, politically, and conclude that what we have is a bad case of system failure, and thus the imperative of system change. When you have encompassing problems spreading across the entire national landscape, it can't be for small reasons. It's the system, stupid. And we live and work in this system of political economy, America's operating system, if you will, that's delivering terrible results. I look at the international comparisons, for example. I looked at the 20 leading democracies, the old OECD, and I looked at 30 key indicators of national well-being and global citizenship. And I was startled, frankly, to find that the United States is at the bottom, the very bottom, or next to the bottom, on all 30 of these indicators of national performance. So it follows that if we want to change the direction the country's headed and build this attractive future for our children and grandchildren, we're going to have to change the system. We've got to drive this systemic, transformative change until we have, in effect, a new system of political economy, a new operating system for America, one that delivers good results for human and natural communities. Put otherwise, we've got to embed new and different priorities at the core of our political economy. And to do that, I think we've first got to understand what are the elements of this operating system that we have today that are driving us into this sea of troubles, the forces that must be changed. Well, in general, it's the titanic forces unleashed by America's ruthless and rapacious brand of capitalism and by the national security state that we've created that lie behind most of the big challenges that our country faces. So in broad terms, these, I think, are the root causes, and they perpetuate existing problems, they give rise to new ones on a regular basis, and they keep the problem spigot fully open. So I analyzed in the book what are the key elements of today's American capitalism, the key elements of our security apparatus, And I do that in the first part of the book, and I show, I think, how these elements interact to produce a system that greatly rewards and indeed is based on the pursuit of profit and growth and power, and does little to encourage concern for people and place and planet. I'll turn in a moment to these key features of today's system and how we need to change them. But the point I want to stress now is that what is central to the system change that we need is a move to a new economic paradigm, a new economy that puts unambiguous priority on people and place and planet. And finally, in part one of the book, I conclude that we need a new politics to make it happen, and that we don't have much time. Time is the most important variable in the equation of the future. And I think there are four real horsemen in America's decline today that are steadily closing down possibility and pushing us to urgency in this area. One is this creeping corporatocracy and plutocracy that we see unfolding. Second is the pervasive militarization. Third is climate disruption. And fourth is a steady hollowing out of American society, things that are happening to our citizens. So after stating the challenge, what we're up against, the major part of the book then goes on out of this veil of tears and asks, what's the attractive future that's still within our reach, and what have we got to do to realize that future? So that leads me to the second point, the second imperative, and that is the imperative of a compelling vision of the future. When systemic change does come, it'll do so because people agitating for change have presented a positive vision of a future worth fighting for. And so for starters, we need a positive vision of what our country could look like in, say, 2050. Describing that America, the possible of 2050 is, of course, a tricky business. And I do my best to present such a vision. It needs a lot of work, and I hope there'll be many others turning to this issue. But it starts with catching the United States up with the other industrial democracies, realizing social justice and well-being in our country, building peace and real global security, and sustaining the planet's environmental assets both domestically and internationally. And we will have reclaimed our democracy. We will have seen a deep transformation in our dominant values and culture. And it'll be a future more characterized by localization than globalization. Well, change also happens not just because people have a vision of what things could be like in the country, but they also believe that the means are available to get there. The means are available to realize this vision. And that leads me to the third imperative, the imperative of knowing how to move confidently ahead. In the book, I describe how systemic change can be pursued by driving an interacting, mutually reinforcing set of transformations or transitions. These are transformations that would undermine the motivational structure of the current system and replace these old structures with new arrangements needed for a sustaining economy and a successful democracy. In particular, I describe in some detail in the book the policy and other means that are needed to move in each of the following directions. In the market, from today's near laissez-faire to a powerful market governance in the public interest. From dishonest prices to honest ones, from commodification to protection of the commons. In the corporation, from shareholder primacy to stakeholder primacy. From one ownership and motivational model to new business models involving alternative forms of ownership and to the democratization of capital. In money and finance, from Wall Street to Main Street, from money created through bank debt